Hello again. Today I'll be telling you guys more about the monk class now, and just some useful information on them, from character creation, subclass, and level up choices to just overall gameplay of these guys. So let's kind of dive in. Um, I've been using Withers again to just kind of redo a character. Um, just kind of speed life up here a little bit. So a monk is primarily a mobile, dexterous class in D&D. They're usually pretty good here with unarmed strikes, so punches. They do have some options with being stealthy as the Way of Shadow subclass. They also have some abilities to get some spells if you choose Way of the Four Elements as your subclass. But primarily their attribute is dexterity and wisdom. I say wisdom because wisdom is used for a lot of their spells for the four elements. Also, in addition, wisdom is added to certain abilities based on some skills. Well, not skills, but attributes. They gain proficiency in strength and dexterity saving throws. Their hit dice is a d8, and they have proficiency in simple weapons and short swords. So that would be like quarterstaffs and things of that nature. From a race perspective, I would say elves, just because the charm and sleeping benefits. Also, they have proficiency in other weapons, so you could be a monk who's good with a longsword or a rapier. Deep gnomes, just because of their advantage on stealth checks and the larger amount of dark vision. Humans, just because. And again, like I always keep going for halflings because of lucky, or gnomes for the benefits you get to saving throws on spells. There's just a slew of different races out there that you can choose that be very helpful for things. If you're planning from a ability standpoint, if you're planning on working with monk spells, I'd say a high wisdom. If you're not planning on doing any spells of any kind in regards to like the subclasses, then you'd want to take some high dexterity or maybe high strength if you plan on playing an unarmed monk. And also constitution is always helpful because, more HP means more damage you can soak up. If you are starting out and you are doing just a bare bones monk, I would say 10 strength, 16 dexterity, 10 con, get some intelligence in here, and even out these two abilities. And then also we're going to bump up our constitution. By doing this, you'd have high dexterity, you'd have high constitution for things. Intelligence is always helpful for a certain amount of things, but you could also dump this down to like 12, so you could get 17 dex off the bat, drop it down to 10 for here if you wanted to even out all your stats, and then drop your last point wherever. If you're planning more of a strength-based monk, I'd recommend then getting yourself up to 17 strength, 14 dexterity. Let's see. Well, get ourselves up here. 17 strength. Get ourselves some dexterity, some con to get ourselves up to 15. You can keep the rest of these kind of low, and you can round off your wisdom and charisma, or round off your wisdom and intelligence, or up your dexterity to try and get that up to 15. Because of how many saves there are in the game, I'd recommend at least getting these to even out to zeros. just because if you don't, you're going to have a bad time when it comes to spells, unless you've picked like one of those races I mentioned that give you advantages on those kind of saves. If you're doing like a 4 elements monk, which would be very magic focused, like I had mentioned, they want to have decent wisdom, so we're going to dump this up to 16. Let's take these off here. You want to have decent dexterity, decent con. We'll round off our intelligence, keep our charisma at nothing. And like our strength can be down to basically nothing as well. So this would, if you're planning on being like, yep, I'm gonna pick the 4 elements subclass, I want to have decent wisdom. I can always dump this down and even out my strength. Or I can do this. There you go. Then you can get your bonuses to either having there you go. So now at this point I can either get I can either make my dexterity a +3 or my con a +3 in this instance. This is also something else you could do too. Instead of what I had mentioned for a dex, you could give you 16 or 14 here, or 15 here, sorry, that you could either move to other points. But as a 4 elements monk, you're going to want some decent wisdom. From a skills aspect, you're a monk, so high acrobatics, high insight would be another good one. You're going to get stealth and sleight of hand already for a lot of things. It's just very helpful that way. At level 1, as a monk, we gain these key points, and these key points are used for actually, let me start back. Flurry of blows. Basically, you can punch twice. You get 2 attacks. Basically, you get 2 punches with the use of 1 attack option. It uses a key point to do so, and you only get so many key points. So at level 1, you have 2 key points to start, and you can use these, like I mentioned, for those flurry of blows. So it means you could do flurry of blows twice before you would have to you'd be out of points. You gain unarmored defense, which lets you add your wisdom modifier to your armor class while you're not wearing armor. So, like I had mentioned earlier, like, you know, wisdom would be beneficial for some of our attributes. So like wisdom, rather than putting things into strength, if you wanted to be a dex-based monk, you would put it into wisdom, and vice versa. If you wanted to do strength, you would put your bonuses at least into wisdom, so you can get some bonuses while not wearing armor. But you already get access to a lot of different things. You also gain martial arts, a dexterous attack, which lets you basically the attack scales with your strength modifier, and you can use your dex mod instead. It scales with your modifiers of strength and dexterity, but what it allows you to do is use your dex instead of strength for monk weapons and unarmed strikes. So basically you can, when you attack, rather than it doing your attacks with high strength, you're doing it with dexterity instead of your strength score. So like having high strength or high dex eventually becomes 6 one, half dozen the other. It's, do you want to have higher dexterity for those skills, or do you want to have higher strength for strength skills? You also gain, as part of this martial arts, deft attacks, which your unarmed strikes deal a 1d4 bludgeoning damage, unless the regular damage is higher. You also gain a bonus unarmed strike. Basically, while you're unarmed, so no weapons, you can make another unarmed strike as a bonus action. At level 2, you gain unarmored movement speed, which increases your movement speed by 3 if you're not wearing any armor or using a shield. You also gain an additional key point as part of this, and every time you level up, you gain more key points. It's very similar to sorcerers, where as they level up, they just keep getting more sorcerer points for all the cool stuff that they can do. You also gain patent defense, which as a bonus action, attack rolls against you have disadvantage, and you have advantage on saving throws. And that's a bonus action, and it's the cost of a bonus action and a key point. Also, by spending a key point as a bonus action, you can dash, which lets you double your movement speed. You can also use a key point and a bonus action to disengage. So your key points, think of them as things that you spend it and you can do cool stuff in return. And our health goes up every level and so forth. At level 3, you also gain another key point, but you also gain this ability called Deflect Missiles, which lets you use your reaction to reduce the damage from a ranged attack by a d10 plus your dex mod and your monk level. So at this point, I have a +3 to dex, and I'm a level 3 monk, so that means it's a d10 plus 6 to reduce that damage. So if somebody hits me with, let's say, 10 damage from an arrow, and I roll an 11, well, now it did nothing. If you reduce the damage to 0, though, you can use a key point to basically return it back at the target that shot you. At level 3, also at level 3, your Death Strikes. Let's see, where is it? No, not Death Strikes, sorry. Different level. Let's show it. Yes, so at level, they don't show it as part of the level up here, but when you hit level 3, your Death Strikes now become a d6. Also at level 3, you're able to select your subclasses. There's the Way of the Four Elements, which is very much a spell-based monk. A Way of the Open Hand lets you be better at unarmed strikes. And Way of the Shadow is basically, think of it as the rogue version of a monk. And we'll start with the Four Elements. Way of the Four Elements, like I mentioned, is more of adding magic to your bag of tricks. So like we gain 3 spells. We gain 3 spells to choose from a preset list. So we get Burning Hands. These are all level 1 damagey spells. So Fangs of the Fire Snake. This is really nice because just of the range and the amount of damage it's going to do. I'd recommend Fist of the Unbroken Air just because of the amount of damage. It's 3d10 and you can push somebody prone. It costs you 2 key points to do this. It's less of a spell and more of a, to me it's less of a spell and more of a key point usage. Actually, that's what all of these are, sorry. Water Whip, again, decent damage. And things like Gale Spirits would knock people off balance, giving you an advantage on them for attacks. Ice Knight or Blade of Rim, you do some cold damage. So like, there's a lot of nice spells here, or abilities that you can use here. Basically, you use your key to power this magic, and you're able to trigger it during an unarmed strike. So when you do an unarmed strike, you can then spend 2 key points, like, okay, I did my unarmed strike, but now I'm also going to do Fist of the Broken Air and just destroy these people. Also at level 3 as this monk, you gain Harmony of Fire and Ice. Basically, while you're not in combat, you regain half of your key points rounded down. So what's lovely about this is that, let's say you have 6 key points, right? You used 4 of them, 5 of them in combat. Well, you just got out of combat. You gained 3. You just gained 3 of them back. So now you have 4. So like as you get into combat, you do like a really, a simple combat against, let's say, like 1 or 2 things. Leave combat. Now you've gained your key points. Go back in. So like, because you can leave combat, you don't have to stay there and fight things. So you could constantly go in, fight, use your key points, try and get out, end combat, come back in, or just keep getting it back left and right. So if you really want to be using your key points left and right, this would be a fun thing to have. At level 6, you gain Disciple of Elements, which my note is not here. Give me a minute. Where is it? I scrolled too far is what happened. Basically, you learn magic, more spells that you can use key points on. That list of spells varies from what level of monk you are. Like at level 6, sorry, you gain just more. You gain spells from that are like level 5-ish. You also gain this effect again at levels 9 and 11. So at 9 and 11, you gain. You can pick higher damaging spells, for lack of a better term. At level 9, you gain, like I mentioned, the Disciples of Elements. You can gain a spell from that. It's just going to be more powerful spells. But you also get improved elemental casting, which your spells gained from that Disciple of Elements deal an additional dice of damage. So when I do an unarmed strike and I use Fist of Unbroken Air, rather than doing 3d10 damage, I'm now going to do 4d10 damage, and so forth. And like I mentioned, at level 11, you gain another ability from this list. So it's really less of spells, like they call them spells in the game, but they're really more just like magically enhanced strikes, for lack of a better term. For Way of the Open Hand, you gain benefits to your Flurry of Blows. You gain more or less modifiers to it, I guess would be a better way for me to put it. You spend key points to do this, but because you're going to be spending a key point for Flurry of Blows. But in addition to making those 2 attacks at a d6 in my case here, you have a possibility to knock them prone if you do a Topple Flurry of Blows. If you do a stagger, you have the ability to stagger them, potentially stagger them, which makes them unable to take reactions. Or you have the ability to push them, which just pushes them away from you 5 feet, giving you basically the equivalent of the shove bonus action. For the push, they have to make a Wisdom saving throw against your DC. Actually, all of these are Wisdom saves against your DC, I should say. At level 6, your unarmed strikes deal an additional 1d4 plus your Wisdom modifier of necrotic damage. Or you get Manifestation of the Mind, which does the same thing but psychic. And then Manifestation of Soul is an option, but instead of psychic, it does radiant damage. So that's where coming in, like having a decent Wisdom is good, because you're going to get these bonuses to your attacks as time goes on. You also gain Wholeness of Body, which lets you regain half your key points and regain HP equal to 3 times your monk level. So that Wholeness of Body is very similar to what we gained at level 3 as Way of the 4 Elements, where we gain half of our key points rounded down. It's just we gain that, but we also gain HP with it too. That's why it's a little farther up in the list. At level 9, you gain Key Resignation, both a punch and a bonus action version of this. And what these do is let you deal an additional d8 of damage to a target, and you can use an action or bonus as an action or bonus action. And then you can use this thing called Key Resignation Blast, which let you deal 3d6 force damage. It requires the target to do a dex save. And on a success, they take half damage, and if they fail, they take full damage. This effect applies to to basically like outnumber the target that's next to them as well. So like, let's say these two squares are enemies. If I attack this guy in the middle, or actually say all these are enemies, let's say they lined up in a perfect line. If I attack the guy in the middle, the guy on the left has to make a save, and the guy on the right has to make a save. And they, in addition, because of this blast, are going to take that damage as well. So each one of these squares would take that 3d6 force damage from this blast. At level 11, you gain what's called Tranquility. Long rests basically surround you with an aura, and you gain what's called Sanctuary, which makes enemies have to make a Wisdom save in order to attack you. And if they fail that Wisdom save, they have to pick a different target. This effect ends when you make an attack in any way. So if you were to, you could just walk around the battlefield, and they can try to attack you, and like they could either hit you or they'll fail and have to attack somebody else. Way of the Shadow, you gain a good amount of things. You gain a cantrip called Minor Illusion, which creates an illusion of you that causes the creature, creates an illusion that makes enemies investigate it. It just doesn't require concentration. You just cast it and go on your way. You gain Shadow Arts, which is you get a hide option, or you gain these Shadow Arts actions, I should say. So one of them is hide, which lets you hide from an enemy if you make successful stealth checks. Casting a spell or attacking will just negate this and you'll be shown. Pass Without Trace adds a +10 to your stealth checks and your allies' stealth checks. Darkness lets you cast basically the darkness spell and blind creatures within a 5-meter radius. It costs 2 key points to do. All of these cost. Pass Without Trace costs 2 key points as well. Dark Vision lets you increase your dark vision up to 12 meters until the end of a long rest. This costs again key points. And then Silence lets you cast a spell that causes concentration for you, but what it does is it makes that area soundproof, meaning that most magic users can't cast spells, and anyone inside that is immune to thunder damage. At level 5, you gain Cloak of Shadows, which lets you become invisible for 10 rounds. And this effect ends if you cast a spell, attack, take an action, or take damage. At level 6 of this subclass, you gain Shadow Step, which it's the equivalent of Misty Step. You can teleport away from your location, but afterwards you gain advantage on your next melee attack. You also gain at level 11 Shadow Strike, which lets you teleport to a target from a hidden position. So you'd have to hide, use this ability to teleport to them, and then you would deal 3d8 psychic damage at the cost of 3 key points. Also, you get an unarmed version of this, which is the same concept, but it's using your unarmed abilities instead of your weapon abilities. So if you had a weapon, you would use the one version of this. That's pretty much it for the subclasses. Like, Way of 4 Elements gives you some cool abilities to use with your key points, and at level 3 you automatically are going to start gaining your key points back after combat. Way of the Open Hand is you get a lot more options for your flurry of blows and unarmed strikes. You eventually are able to regain your key points. Way of the Shadow is one of the only subclasses that you don't really gain your key points back, but you also have more situational based uses for your key points. As a monk at level 4, we gain an attribute or feat bonus, and we also gain Slow Fall, which when you fall, you can use your reaction to gain resistance, which is half damage to the falling damage. At level 5, we gain Extra Attack, which lets us gain an additional attack during our attack action. And you also gain Stunning Strike, both for melee and unarmored, which lets you use your action to attempt to stun a target. They have to make a con save against your DC, which is 10 plus your strength or dex mod, whichever's higher. And then if you hit them, they're stunned. If you use it as an unarmed strike, you deal an additional 1d6 plus your dex, or strength, whichever's higher, as bludgeoning damage. At level 6, you get improved unarmored movement, so you can move an additional 4.5 meters while not wearing armor or a shield. And you also get access to these key-empowered strikes, which your unarmed strikes now count as magical attacks, or magical weapons. At level 7 as a monk, you gain evasion. When you fail a dex save, you can take half the amount of damage instead of the full. And then no damage if you succeed. So normally when you make a dexterity saving throw for like lightning, if you fail it, you would take the full amount of damage. If you succeeded the DC, you would take half damage. In this instance, if you fail it, you only take. Sorry, I think I worded it the wrong way. If you succeed the save, you take half. If you fail, you take the full amount. With evasion, if you succeed, you take no damage, and if you fail, you take half damage. So it's very helpful for those kind of things. Like, quite honestly, like, dex saves are everywhere in the game. You also gain access to an ability called Still of Mind. When you are charmed or frightened, you automatically can cast this and cancel the condition. So there's going to be a point where you just can't be charmed or frightened because you're level 7. It's great. At level 8, you gain another feat or attribute bonus. At level 9, you get advanced unarmored movement, which means difficult terrain no longer slows you down. And you can jump an additional distance as long as you're not wearing armor or shields. And also your death strikes are now a d8 instead of a d6. Improved armored movement, we gain this at level 10, which lets you move, increases your movement speed by 4 meters while you're not wearing armor or a shield. And you also get Purity of the Body, which basically makes you immune to poison damage. And then at level 12, you get another feat and attribute bonus. And also, like I mentioned, during all these levels, you would gain more key points. So at level 12, you'd have 12 key points to use from. So when you get out of combat, you'd gain 6 of them each time if you picked Way of the Four Elements. Monks they're kind of the sleeper class in regards, in my opinion, of just the amount of pure damage they can do, and also being hard to hit with a lot of different things. So like monks are a very good option for a hand-to-hand combat kind of class. I've seen there's a friend of mine, I never seen a monk played in this game because like I just haven't had a chance to play them. He walked up to a Minotaur who had 55 HP and dropped the sucker by doing like 65 damage in one hit by using key points and like flurry of blows and all these other things. It was crazy. Also at level 1, when my one buddy was playing, he's getting 2 attacks at times because he has the key points to do so. So you can really become a damage dealer early on and just stick with it. I'm going to increase this by this by this. That's pretty much monks in a nutshell. If there's anything I missed or you would like to add from your own experiences, feel free to add it in the comments. And as always, I hope you guys are enjoying these videos. I like making them. I'm sorry it's taken so long to get these out. It takes time to, gather everything, and hopefully I'm giving helpful information here and not just being a rambling idiot. So, as always, I hope you guys are enjoying this game, and I'm hopeful to start streaming a playthrough of this soon. I'm going to try and stick to a schedule, if you will, of a couple days, like 1 or 2 days a week of this game. So until then, happy gaming.